Hi all, Lee here. So today I'm going to do my first project. I'm going to make a brass handle for the tailstock on my new lathe. Everyone starts with handles as their first project. I'm no different. It's a good exercise because there's a few different angles. There's a bore. It's just a nice way to get started and try and learn how this machine works. So let's get on. Let's draw out a basic diagram of what we're going to do some measurements, and then we'll jump on the lathe and get going. So this is what we're actually going to copy in brass. So if we take some measurements, doesn't have to be perfect. The best thing about this particular project, there's no screws or threading required. It's just some basic measurements. The main one will be the bore. So as long as I get the bore right, that should be fine. The bore in the center there. So a quick measurement, it's 70 millimeters. So let's draw a diagram. So So 70 millimeters. Let's get this. The length of the tapered edge. So let's take a quick look at that. So the tapered edge looks to be around 25 millimeters. So okay, let's look at the cross section. So roughly 20 millimeters. Excellent. So the other measurements we need to take are the bores. So there is a recess for the head of the nut, the bolt that goes through it. So that fits in there. So let's take the recess measurement. Let's take a look. It's about 16.5 on there. And let's just check it against what the head of this actually is. 15.8. So yeah, so as long as it's 16 plus, let's put that down. So the large bore, 16 millimeters, and finally the main is, it's about 12.2 in there. No, is it 12? Let's just 12.2. Let's just measure that against the actual, which is 11.8. So 12 millimeters plus. So there are basic measurements. One final measurement I almost forgot. What is the angle of the taper? So the way I'm going to do the taper on there, hopefully you can see that, is I'm going to measure the angle. I've got the rough guide to where it starts when I start cutting. But what I'll do is I will just measure that angle. So I'll measure it using this. And then I can just cut the angle, and that should sort of finish about where I need it to be. So that's the way I'm going to tackle this one. So if I put that against there, so if we take a look at the angle, roughly, hopefully you can see that, but we're looking at about 7 degrees, 7 or 8 degrees. So what I'll do is I'll set the compound to 7 or 8 degrees and start cutting the angle from the where I need to. I think it was 25 millimeters I put down for the length of that, but that length should come when I've set the angle and just start cutting. So hopefully we'll see how it turns out. So let's just write that down. This angle, 7 degrees. So now we've got some basic measurements. I think it's time we jump on the lathe and we start trying to cut this out. Hopefully it will go okay. Like I say, it's my first project, so let's get going. Right, so first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut this down to size and face it off. I think I'm going to put a groove in the end at the 7 centimeters, 70 millimeters, just so I've got a distance to work with. But before we do that, let's just skim it off and then we'll take some measurements. Right, I just want to mark up the 70 millimeters. So it's going to be somewhere around here. So let's just. So now we've got roughly our 70 millimeter mark. It's actually 71 millimeters. I want to leave a bit more length in case I want to face it off a little bit more. But we've got a good mark there. So all I want to do is I want to put the parting tool in and just put a groove in there to give me a guide on how far I need to go and where to do things. So let's do that. All right, so that groove should be good enough just to get me started, just to give me a rough guide to where I am. So let's take it down to size now. So if you remember, it's 20 millimeters. But I want to make my handle a little bit thicker than that. So I will not go down to 20. I can leave it slightly larger. So what are we on at the moment? We're on about 25 mil. So let's take a few passes to skim that down a bit. So I've just done a couple of passes, so I'll just check the measurement to see where we are. 22, 22.17, 22.15, yeah, so I'll just do one more pass. That's about the thickness that I want for my handle. So I'll do one more sort of thin light pass and then we'll put the taper in. The 7 or 8 degree angle which I'll set the compound up to do. Let's take this measurement here. So roughly 21.7, 21.7, 21. Yeah, so that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to leave it there. That's about the thickness that I want for my handle. Like I say, the reason this is a perfect beginner project is because most of the dimensions you can make up as you go along. So that's good enough for me. The next thing is to set the compound, and I'll start taking cuts using a compound at the 8 degree angle that we measured earlier. So I've just loosened the nuts off. Let's try and set the compound to where we need it to be. So roughly, that should do it. Around 8 degrees I've set that. So just tighten that up again. So I've set the compound angle around 8 degrees. I need to put on a different tool. Hopefully I can get that in focus. Because I need to go into an edge. So hopefully this tool should work for the angle I need to do. I'm going to do the angle at this end. So I just double check this is the tool for the job. Like I say, I'm still learning, so I don't know the best tools for each occasion. Right, so I've changed my mind on the tool again because I don't know how I'm going to get in there. So I've got a much sharper diamond, so I've got more of a relief angle as I cut in with the compound. But all that's left to do is to try and start this off. So it's a bit too thin at this end now. The bore is 16 millimeters, but that's already down to 15. So I can't drill that. And anyway, I'd prefer to drill the bore through that when it's in the chuck itself. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to part this piece off. Then I'm going to put the piece directly into the chuck and we'll start boring from there. It's looking good. So let's get this in the chuck and we'll start the boring operations. So I'm glad I checked my dimensions. 16 millimeter is the recess for the head. The actual bore itself is 12 millimeters, so I've got plenty of room on this. But I would prefer to have the part now secure in the chuck. It's more stable for when I start drilling. So let's center drill and then let's get progressively larger until we hit our 12 millimeters and we'll take a measurement and see where we are. So I think I'll start with 5 millimeters and go up from there. This should be okay. So let's give it a go. Now I'm just cutting the final 12 millimeter dimension. I've slowly gone up sizes, so hopefully this should go through. And we can then do the nut head bore on the other side. So let's get this done. So that's the bore on that side all the way through. What I need to do is I probably need to clean it up, but what I'll do is, in fact, let's take a look now just to give an idea. So this is what we have to put through the centre. So let's take a look. Oh, look at that. That is perfect. Absolutely perfect fit. Just loose enough that I can get a film of oil in between the bore and the screw there. Well, bolt. So that's good. Right, let's flip the part and we'll put the head recess in, which is 16 millimeters. So the final operation before polishing is just to put a 16 millimeter bore into that, 8 millimeters deep. That's the size of the bolt, so let's do that now. I'm going to start with a 13 mil drill because that's the biggest I've got, and then I can fit my small boring bar in there and bore it to size. Let's do that now. Let's just take a quick measurement and see where we are, but that should be about right. It should be around 16 mil. 16.14. 16.14, perfect. So what we can take a look is this should fit in here nicely. So let's take a look. Oh, perfect. The right depth. Oh, that looks really good. So I'm pleased with that. So the final job now is I'll put some chamfers on there, and then give it a polish on the polisher, and hopefully that will be it. And then we'll have a fit it. So let's do that now. So slight change of plan. I forgot to put some features on there. So what I'm going to do is just put some small lines in there, and then I'm going to use my knurling tool. I've never used one of those before, except for a bit of practice on a piece of aluminium. So let's give it a go and see what happens. So I've put a live centre in there just to give it some rigidity, and got the knurling tool. So I've got it at a slower speed, 280 RPM. Not too slow. What I've found in practice, it seems to actually work better and catches its own grooves if you go a little bit faster. So let's do this and see what happens. Well, that's not too bad at all. I'm actually really pleased with that. We'll take a closer look in a minute, but that actually looks really good. So now let's polish it up and see where we are. Right, so finally my very first go at making a part. I've made the handle, I've finished it. The dimensions are pretty much perfect for what I wanted to hit, especially the bore. So everything looks to be really good. It's going to be a nice tight fit, but it still spins freely with a little bit of oil in there. So I'll let you have a closer look here. So as a first attempt, I'm really pleased at how this has turned out. So let's put it on the machine and see how it fits. Right, there's barely any movement in that, just enough. I mean, I couldn't get the dimensions any better. Just a tiny bit of movement, just enough that it spins freely with a nice film of oil in there. That is really good. I'm so pleased with that. So let's bring this video to the end. Next video, I'll probably make a couple more handles for the lathe just to keep practicing, and then we'll see if we can work on something a little more complex. So see you later.